On Christmas Day, they open the presents and they're all happy and excited. And then 3 days later, you see that everything you brought them, or the thing that you spent the most on, is the thing they don't play with anymore, or they broke it already. And so I remember having one of those moments with one of my kids. He asked me for something. He was like, "Man, I really want this thing." And I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna get it for you." And then I'm thinking like, I spent all my hard-earned money to get you this toy, and then it broke it within 2 days. And it got me to thinking about how in times in life so then the following Christmas will roll around, and I started thinking, is he ready for this toy that I'm getting ready to get him? Is he going to be able to use this toy for a very long time? Or is this just something that I need to wait till he's a little older to get? So that made me start thinking about this message today: delay, not deny. Because sometimes we have to delay what we want. And sometimes it looks like a denial. So I might tell my child, "Hey, I'm not going to get you this toy yet because you're not ready for it." So to them that looks like a denial, but in reality it's just a delay. And so I'm going to preach on that message today. And we're going to skip around to really tell this message. So we're going to start off with the prodigal son. And we're going to go to Luke 15, verse 11 through 17. And I will read it here for you. In verse 11 he says, "And he said, a certain man had 2 sons. And the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the portion of goods that is fallen to me. And he divided unto them his living. And not many days after the younger son gathered all together and took his journey into a far country, and there wasted his substance with riotous living. And when he had spent all there, arose a mighty famine in the land, and he began to be in want. And he would fain have filled his belly with the husk that the swine did eat, and no man gave it unto him. And when he came to himself, he said, How many hired servants of my father's have bread enough to spare, and I perish with hunger? See, what happened with the story with the prodigal son is he was given his inheritance, but he was not prepared for his inheritance. And so he wasted the inheritance that he was given. And it made me start thinking about the people that win the lotto, and then they're broke within a few years of winning the lotto. And it wasn't because they didn't have the money. It was because they didn't have the understanding of how to use the money or where to put the money to keep it and grow it. And so they wasted it. And just like he did with his inheritance, he wasn't ready for it. And now we're going to skip over to a different type of story. We're going to jump into Joseph, and the man with the coat of many colors. And Joseph, he went through a lot of things. And I'm just going to give his little, I call it a delay sheet right here. He was sold into slavery by his brothers. He was put into prison after refusing Potiphar's wife. And then in prison, he met a cupbearer and a baker who should have helped him in a situation when they were in prison. And so he was delayed quite a bit in his life. So we're going to jump into Genesis 37:2. This is the account of Jacob's family line. Joseph, Joseph, a young man of 17 years old, was tending to flocks with his brother, the son of Bilhah. And I worked on that name. I was listening to figure out exactly how to say that. And listened to it a few times. The son of Zilpah. I listened to that one too. His father's wife. And he brought their father a bad report about them. All right. In verse 5 of Genesis 37, Joseph had a dream. And this is a very important piece. Joseph had a dream, and when he told his brothers, they hated him all the more. Okay? So we know what happens after Joseph has a dream. His brothers hated him. They sold him into slavery, and that's where he ended up in Potiphar's house as a slave. And we're going to jump over to Genesis 41:25. And I want to point out that in the last verse, we discovered that this happened to Joseph at the age 17. And in Genesis 41:25, then Joseph said to Pharaoh, the dreams of Pharaoh are one and the same, and God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. So we see Joseph. The last time we seen Joseph in the story is he's sold into slavery by his brothers, and then we skipped some time, and now Joseph is he is revealing a dream that the Pharaoh had to him. And the key word here is a dream. He had a dream that got him sold into slavery, and he had a dream that he's now revealing to Pharaoh. And so we're going to touch on that a little bit. Let's go into Genesis 41:41. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt. And in verse 46, he says, Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of the Pharaoh of Egypt. And Joseph went out from Pharaoh's presence and traveled throughout Egypt. Okay, so here we have Joseph. He was 17 years old when he had his original dream, the dream that got him sold into slavery. And then he goes through, he has these delays. The first delay was getting sold into slavery. And then the second delay for Joseph was he was in Potiphar's house, and he had resisted Potiphar's wife, and then was put into prison. Now, when he was put into prison, he was also delayed again, because when he revealed another dream to the cupbearer and to the baker about their fates, the cupbearer, his dream went actually both of their dreams went exactly as it was planned. But the cupbearer, when he was put right back before Pharaoh, he didn't even think to mention Joseph or how, he helped him or how he could reveal dreams. It wasn't until 2 years later, after Joseph was sitting in that prison for 2 years after he helped the cupbearer, that then the cupbearer remembers, oh yeah, I got this friend Joseph. Yeah, he tells dreams. He told mine 2 years ago. That's why I'm here. And so Joseph, for that 2 years, had to have patience. He had to sit there that whole time. So Joseph knew from the age of 17 who he was supposed to become. Now imagine if Joseph had said to himself during that trial period that, hey, I had this dream. This is who I'm supposed to become. This is what I'm supposed to do. But all these things are happening to me that I don't understand. I'm getting thrown into slavery. My brothers hate me. I'm thrown into prison. I'm abandoned by my homies I met in prison. Well, one of them, because the other one died. But I'm abandoned by, the guys I met in prison. He had all the reason in the world to be upset and to be angry about what happened to him. But as we learned in the story of Joseph, that part of this was to teach him patience and was to prepare him for what was to come. If Joseph had been sold into slavery, when his brother sold him into slavery, if he had immediately been given given a job for Pharaoh, he would not have helped his brothers. He would have been so angry and upset with his brothers. But that 13 years, that gave him time to learn who he needed to become, to practice patience, to understand that God has a will for his life. And he had to learn all that in those 13 years. And I remember talking to my brother one time, and he told me, he said, it took me, and this was after I got divorced, he told me it took him 7 years to find the right person for him. And I laughed, I turned around and looked at him, I said, it ain't gonna take me 7 years. And he said, all right. And it was very interesting because it didn't take me 7 years to meet someone else. It took me not very long. And what I learned through that time period was just because you meet someone, it doesn't mean it's the right person for you. And it turned out that he was correct. It took me 7 years to meet the right person for me because I had to go through that period of time to develop myself. And I had to come to the process of understanding, who is Jalal and what are some of the things that Jalal needs. And to mature. If I had met my wife 7 years ago, we wouldn't be together now because I wasn't ready. I wasn't mature enough to be able to be in a space where we could, do what we did, get married and, progress what we had. And so there are times in life where we feel like we are being denied, but we are often being delayed because there's something that we're supposed to learn in that season. And taking the time to actually learn the things that we need to learn in that season is the most important thing we can do. And we saw in the beginning what happened with the I can't even think of his name. What happened with the I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. What happened with the prodigal son, and how he wasn't ready for it, and he ended up having to come back to his father's house almost after trying to eat pig slop, because he didn't understand that sometimes you're not given things because you're not ready yet. And I think that is something we have to teach our children too. And I think that's very important for us to teach our children is you have to prepare for what you want. I remember telling one of my kids just recently that I wanted to, because we had a key, and literally it was just the key to the car. It didn't have the remote part of it, nothing. And I told the kids, I was like, you know what? I can't wait till we get a new car so I can at least do the alarm part of the car to open up the door for Shay. And then a couple of days later, we go to a restaurant and we valet the car, and they completely broke the key. So then I had to go and get a new key fob with the remote on it. And it was funny. I was thinking, God, you're funny. Because sometimes we want stuff, and it's like, how are you taking care of the car you have now before you ask me for something else? And then I told Shay, I got to start keeping up the way we take care of this car. Make sure we wash this car. And then I got the new key fob. I can open the door now. I don't have to worry about that. But it was just funny because sometimes we think the answer is something more than what we already have. And sometimes the answer is just to take care of what you have before you ask for more. Now we're going to go to Romans 8:25. But if we hope for what we do not yet have, we wait for it patiently. I think sometimes we lose hope. When something doesn't happen right when we expect it to happen, we sometimes feel like we are being denied and we are never going to receive what it is we're supposed to receive. But sometimes we still have to have hope and and work towards whatever it is we want still. Because a lot of times if we don't get it right away, what we'll do is we'll lose hope and then we'll stop working towards it. And then when we do that, we never eventually get there. It basically is like a self-fulfilling prophecy because we stop having hope and we stop working towards it. So it's never too late is the point, and we have to have hope the whole way we go. And I was thinking about something too. I was told with Shay the other day, Morgan Freeman has been in movies for as long as I can remember, and I looked up when he got started. He did not get started in actual movies until he was in his late 40s. But he was on stage prior to that time, but never actually in movies in the movie theater. And so it was very interesting that had he given up prior, he could have said, hey, I'm in my mid-40s, I'm never going to reach my goal. If he had given up then, we wouldn't have seen him in all the movies that we've seen him in since if he had given up on himself. And so the 3 keys that I really want you guys to take away is don't give up on your dreams. Do not give up on your dreams. You may have been delayed, but it does not mean you are denied. You have to keep believing in your dreams. You have to keep hoping for what it is you want out of life. And you have to believe that it is possible, no matter what your circumstances or what your life looks like at this point. Whatever it is still possible, because if we saw with Joseph, he was given a dream at 17, and it was a dream that brought the cupbearer to remember Joseph, and it was a dream that he interpreted for Pharaoh that led to his promotion from his original dream. So dreams will always play a part in what we want and where we're trying to go. So please remember that. And sometimes when we are denied, it can be a precursor to something bigger. I can think back of plenty of times in my life where I've been in circumstances and then be like, dang, I'm glad that didn't work out, because if that would have worked out, I would have missed the bigger blessing that was coming to me. And Steve Jobs has a quote about sometimes we look back, we can only connect the dots when we look back at situations that have looked at our lives and see how they have changed and the things that led up to it. Like, dang, I didn't know that was going to lead to this. But we can only do that by understanding too that sometimes there's something bigger that we just can't see. And so don't take it as a denial, it's just a delay. And if you feel like, and the third key is if you feel denied, ask, what do I need to learn in this season? Because like the person who won the lotto, what they need to learn was financial management in that season. If they had learned the financial management, they would still have had the money. And for me, what I had to learn, in my own life was sometimes patience and sometimes just understanding who I was as a person. We go through different seasons in life, we grow, we adjust, we become more, but there's always a question in those seasons. And so if we're in a season where you feel like you've been denied, the question is to ask ourselves, what am I supposed to learn in this season? Anytime anything happens, what is the lesson here? Because as we learn in life, if we do not get the lesson the first time, we keep repeating it until we do. And so the question is always, what is the lesson? What do I need to